and more specifically, with no slight to any of my brothers here today, it is the voice of black women that we believe should be heard on this critical issue of protecting our voter rights, fighting against voter suppression. We know throughout our history, black people had to fight for everything that we have gotten in this country. And most of the time, we are very fortunate that black women have been on the forefront of those fights, joined with black men. We know that in 2021, we are still fighting against voter suppression in a country that was built on the back of enslaved ancestors. It is simply unacceptable, and we're here today to tell you we are not accepting it anymore. We know what we have to lose. We are here to tell you that we will continue to join with our black female leaders and allies. We'll march, we'll rally, we'll organize, we will write legislation, and as you know, many of us have been arrested to ensure that the legislation for equal voting rights happens. How does that happen? H.R. 1. How does that happen? H.R. 4. We know what's ahead of us. And we are so pleased that the women who are gathered here with us today will be fighting on behalf of all Americans, but especially black Americans. We are not afraid. We know what our message and what our power happens to be. You know, there's that old saying that many of us heard, if you're scared, go buy a dog. We stand here today because we are not scared. We stand here today as members of the Congressional Black Caucus, leading the way. And what a better way for us to lead the way than to join with an intergenerational group. So many people want us to be divided and talk about what are the people that are over here on the left and in the middle. Well, let me tell you, today it is our collective power. And we start in our old traditional way. I'd like to ask Barbara Reverend Skinner, there she is, someone that is no stranger to us. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary of the CBC. But we are also planning for our Congressional Black Caucus Foundation annual legislative conference, where you know it as the prayer breakfast. In these times, we call it a day of healing. So, Dr. Skinner, as our founder of that breakfast, we're asking you to come give us some inspirational words as we enter into this day of healing.
Let's just pray. For God of our weary years and our silent tears, we are crying silent tears for a nation that has forgotten what justice is. We are crying today, oh God, for every person who tried to vote and couldn't vote. We're crying for those who had to put an X down to vote, for the Fannie Lou Hamers and others, God, who walks miles to vote. So this is not a political right. This is not just a human right. This is a holy right. This is a sacred right, God. Yes. And so we're standing in the tradition of those who have stood for righteousness in our land. Yes. We're not fooled by how long it will take. I turned to Sister Maxine Waters and said, we've been here before. But we will stay as long as it takes for our children and our grandchildren and their children to be treated as full citizens in an America we help to build. So help us not to grow tired in doing well, because in the end, the harvest will be reaped to your glory. We praise you in your mighty and holy and righteous name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Let me at this time ask our colleague and sister, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, to come forward. She embodies our theme of our 50th anniversary, Black excellence, unparalleled, pressing onward in power. Now, when the President of the United States calls you, his Congresswoman. We just know she's going to bring a strong message to us as we kick off our 50th anniversary and as we talk about Black voices, Black agenda, a new civil rights movement. Lisa Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I've got to take this off for a second, just for a second. First of all, I am looking out at some of the most beautiful, powerful people that I know. One of the most incredible sisters that I know, Chairwoman Joyce Beatty, in the midst of her own pain, has stood up, stepped up, and came out front and even got arrested with these sisters right here because she understands the times that we are in. And I'm so glad that you said we're not scared. Because it's kind of funny that this morning, what was my scripture? It was 2 Timothy. God has not given us a spirit of fear. We got sound minds up in here. We got sound minds. That's what the CBC is about. And so I am so glad to be here. I am so humbled. I got notes, but I'm going to go with the spirit. Because it is so clear right now. There has never, ever been a time more important than when the CBC was needed. And it is such a time as this.
Yes.
And we've been talking about the inside game and the outside game. We need both the inside and the outside to make it to the promised land. So I want to first say thank you to the powerful women that are standing before me and the brothers. And I want to also say, as you mentioned, it takes all of us. As I was thinking this weekend about John Lewis and the anniversary of his passing, I thought about the scripture, and it's really not a scripture, it's a combination, that the race isn't given to the swift or to the strong, but to the one that endures. And as was said, we've been here before, but we ain't going back. We've been here before, but we're not going back. We see the court trying to strip away our voting rights. We see states across the country trying to strip away our voting rights. Suppression, subversion, intimidation. But not today. Not today.
Not today.
We are standing up as the Congressional Black Caucus in partnership and saying not today. I'm going to be very brief because I thought of a story, and it really ties to the vote. First of all, why is this so important? I think when we have rallies, I went to a rally this weekend, and there were some people out there, but it wasn't enough. Every single person in this country is touched by the right to vote. The vote is tied to criminal justice reform. You want George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? Look, we voted. We voted. Now we know we got to protect the vote. Climate change, the ability to breathe and to have clean water in places like Detroit. The vote is tied to climate change. It's tied to raising the minimum wage. It is tied to everything that's on the line. And so I, in preparation, Saturday, found this story that I never heard. Maybe some of you have heard it. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure y'all have heard it, because I know y'all. But it was John talking about his memoir, Walking in the Wind. And I didn't understand why, in his last letter to us, in the New York Times, he talked about, walk in the wind, children. Walk in the wind. How great is God that we actually had to leave out there and walk in the wind? So as the story goes, John was 4 years old, and he was outside playing in a dirt field with his cousins and his siblings, and the sky got gray like it did outside. And then the wind picked up. And then lightning happened, and his auntie said, come on in this house, get in the house. And it was a wood-framed house with a tin roof. And all of a sudden, the wind picked up. The wind picked up. It was dangerous. And the corner of the house started to lift off the floor. He said he never seen anything like it. It was terrifying. And his auntie said, children, grab each other's hands. Grab each other's hands and walk to the wind. Walk in the direction of danger. That's what we're going to do. We're walking to the wind. You walk to the Senate. We'll walk to the courthouse. We are walking to the the wind. But but there's more to the story. They stepped on that side, and then the other side started shaking. The battle isn't over just because we win one fight.
Yes.
Come on.
That's right.
We got to keep walking in the wind.
That's right.
We got to keep marching. We can't get weary because there's a great camp meeting in the promised land.
All
We
right.
will not be weary. We will not faint. We will not give up. We're going to keep on going. Keep on going. Lastly, I'm going to just share my scar because somebody mentioned that X. And this was my great-great-great-grandfather. Sorry. Jim, I don't want to dust your beautiful head. But there is the X from Georgia, the Returns of Qualified Voters in Reconstruction Oath, which I carried when I was sworn in 2017. And I carried it when we were in that insurrection, robbing us up in that gallery. We're fighting for justice, we're fighting for democracy, we're fighting for the right to vote, and we're not going back.
All right.
Let me just say the two most powerful words we can say, thank you. You know, it takes a lot of us, and for time, Melanie will understand that I'm not going to read all this wonderful stuff that she's done. But we're going to ask the organizers, the sister who made the clarion call, the sister who leads the round table, the sister who is president and CEO of the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. Melanie. The Melanie Campbell. Our hero.
Thank you, Congresswoman, our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. I thank you again for leading us in a moment. We needed you to lead us into that win last Thursday.
Yes.
And I believe that God was there with us, Dr. Skinner and Cleola Brown. And if you met me, called Andrea Alexander from the National Council of Churches.
Yes.
With some sisters and sisters. But my sister Cleola Brown, we
Yes.
were jailmates.
That's right.
And my baby sis, and I don't have one, my baby sis, and leader Latasha Brown and Cliff, and everyone, if I miss anybody, my board member, Diane Babineau. But it just was, and I'm going to be really brief because I know y'all have votes, so we want y'all to go vote. Absolutely. There and there. But I just want to quickly tell the story, and I shared this with everybody. I was in my hometown in Mills, Florida, and my sister was on the road with the bus tour. I'm like, girl, I'm trying to get to you, got to get to you. Then that vote went down in the Senate. And when those 10 senators who could have done the right thing, did not do the right thing, I was in the middle of my mama's house, in the middle of the floor, and the Spirit hit me, and a lot of us have a mentor, Reverend James Owens. He spoke to my spirit.
That's right. Come on.
Spoke in the wind. And he called me Tim, and that's not my name, but he called me Tim for 30 years. And he said, Tim, what you gonna do?
That's right. That's right.
And they just said, we gotta go to jail. Now, I didn't know how I was gonna go to jail, but it was the metaphor of really Congresswoman Maxine
Waters.
They just said we gotta just jump in together. And so that was really what started it. It was like, what can we do? What can we? Things are being done. What can we do? And we just started talking. We and the sisters came together. When I sent this crazy message and said it's time for direct action, the sisters said yes. And a few brothers. Nothing to take away from the brothers that was standing with us. But that was the thing. What can we do? What can we collectively do? Because we know that just as black women, we are the secret sauce to the black vote. We are not just a voting bloc. We carry that black vote. Congressman has always said, the one for black women. Isn't that what you said? And so we knew, so if you're talking about taking the right to vote away and the power that it does for our community, then for black women, we knew we had to keep stepping up. We had to show up for Tasha and Cliff. We had to keep showing up. We had to go into the faith community, like Dr. Skinner taught us, and we're going to keep on fighting. Yes. We are not. There's no option. There's no setting our vote on the shelf. Marcia Johnson Blanco from the Lawyers Committee. There's no sit. We will do whatever it takes because our ancestors did it for us. We got the roadmap.
That's right.
Come on, so we'll go to jail.
That's right.
We'll go back to Congressional Black Caucus. And this is an American issue. It's not just about black people. Because anytime you come for us, it come for you anyway. Those who believe that in exclusion. So when we fight this fight, we're fighting it for the American people. Because this country would not be a democracy if this stays like it is right now. So thank you. We're ready to fight. We're going to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can do better than that. Let me just say, as we round out and close out, we're going to hear from our sister and colleague. I like to call her the daughter of Alabama. She is the first black woman elected to Congress from Alabama. She's a scholar. She's a leader. She's someone who marched with John Lewis. I watched him sit on the floor, Congress after Congress. I watched them organize. So we thought it would be important to hear from her, daughter of Alabama.
Well, first of all, let me just say it is good to be back in the Capitol, and it's good to be around all of you here in the Capitol. I bring you greetings from the people of Selma, Alabama, Birmingham, Montgomery, and yes, my hometown of Selma, just to say that we know that the fight is not over. Who would have ever thought that 56 years after the Voting Rights Act was enacted, that we would still be fighting for that fundamental right to vote? But here we are. Here we are going to jail, Jim, like you went to jail with Miss Emily. Here we are marching like John Lewis and so many others marched. Their cause is now our cause too. And we must stand up and do what they would do because they were tacticians. They were strategists back in the 60s. It wasn't by happenstance that they were in Selma, Alabama. They were there because they knew that they could agitate and that they could actually make movement on the right to vote. So let's learn from their playbook. And as I take my seat, I just wanted to say, to see all the sisters organized, I have to tell you, my mama often told me that if you wanted something said, bring a man. If you want something done, bring a woman. So, in the name of my mama, as I invoke her, I just want to make sure y'all know that we women are here and we men who love women are here. On that journey, I want you all to know that as we drop H.R. 4, nothing is more important than restoring the Voting Rights Act and the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Nothing is more important. John said, yes, get into good trouble, but John also said that our struggle is not a struggle for one day, 1 week, or a lifetime. Ours is a struggle for a lifetime. A lifetime. So let us do and get into some good trouble, and let's restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. You know, I wanted to start that because I wanted to bring the spirit of our people that have been on this land, that 56 years have gone since the voting rights movement, and then 400 years, and our people, our humanity, is still being questioned. And so I'm standing here really full as I'm looking. I was sitting there looking at Frederick Douglass' picture. I was actually thinking, I live in Atlanta, and as I was leaving the airport the other day, it was interesting. There's a standalone historical presentation about Dr. King, and it talks about the March on Washington. And number one on the list is that one of the demand was around legislation for civil rights, and it specifically talks about the filibuster. It actually, literally, part of what the March on Washington was actually about ending, one of the demands was about ending the filibuster. I'm raising this because I think it's really important for a number of things that we do. One, we really have to reflect on where we are in this moment. This is a defining moment. We will decide whether we go down the road of peril or the road of promise. What are the possibilities that exist when people are actually operating in the fullness of their power, that their humanity is acknowledged and recognized? What kind of nation could we build in that? The second thing I think is really important for us to really recognize that in this moment, when we're talking about voting rights, it's not just about elections, you all, that every single human being, you and you and you and myself, I have a right to be able to participate in a decision that's going to decide something about me and my family. That we have to really recognize that this is rooted in a human right. You know, and the third thing that I think we have to really understand is we have to reimagine that democracy as is laid out in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, it has been aspirational at best. There are elements of it that exist, but it has not been fully achieved. And we will not stop until it's fully achieved. So in this moment, what I do believe that we're seeing, there's an opportunity. With HR 1, HR 4 is an opportunity for us to get closer, to literally closer to creating a real democracy, right? That all men and women and people are created equally and with dignity and respect. And in that same spirit, I want to lift up my brother, Cliff Albright, who is also a co-founder of Black Voters Matter, that as we've been talking to folks, we've been going all around the country. We've been going in the backwoods, on the roads. We've literally, our bus has been attacked. This is real. This is people's real life. We're not talking about what's going to happen in the future. Right, every single day we get a phone call from Black rural Georgians and other folks who want us to file a lawsuit. We're involved in 5 lawsuits right now. We cannot organize our way out of this. We cannot litigate our way out of this. We have got to have some federal legislation to really be able to help us. And so even in that same spirit, we ain't gonna stop. We ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. And in that spirit, on tomorrow at 11 a.m., at 11 a.m., where, Cliff?
At the United Methodist Building?
At the United Methodist Building. Meet us there. We who believe in freedom shall not rest until it comes.
I want to say it's an honor to be here. My chair, who has been an amazing role model and a person who has shaken us to be awoke. Shirley Chisholm told us if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair. You know, we had Sojourner Truth, who they couldn't believe a little woman could do what she did. She said, "Watch me work." We know that throughout history, Black women have taken care of our families beyond all the challenges. Black women show up and do the work, and thank God for all the Black men who raise these strong Black women. Thank God for the black men who stand next to us, allow us and protect us and stand with us and praise us as we do God's work. This is about women standing up and leading. We do have influence that man wished they had. We can influence, we can change, and when we speak, you get a lot of women in the room, the men get uncomfortable just in hearing it. They don't know what to do. They start getting nervous, and they say, what do they want? So we can calm them down. We know that women, we know how to work. We're not afraid. We know what pain is. We brought y'all in the world. We are ready to work. Women, we are putting our stamp and we are building on a platform for the women who came before us. We will not be stopped. And we have the wind, we have the sun, and we are going to bring change. God bless you.
And there is a reason that you let the whip have the last word.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm here to say something. Let me begin by thanking all you women for doing so much. As Clay knows, my late wife, to whom I was married for 58 years, and who I met in jail. And those 3 daughters of mine. Give me some license to welcome all of you. I think, you know, I was born and raised in the parsonage, and I tend to believe that in spite of what may look like obstacles and inconveniences, sometimes there's a blessing in it. And because of the weather, we're gathered here in the Lincoln Room.
Come on.
One of the rooms that I have some jurisdiction over, and because of that jurisdiction, I immediately changed the carpet to blue. It was red. But I also brought in these 2 pictures of Frederick Douglass and Robert Smalls. 2 people who sat with Abraham Lincoln when the decision was made to enroll former slaves in the Civil War as Union soldiers. And all the historians said, but for those 40,000 men that Robert Smalls was authorized to bring into the war. He met here with Lincoln, went back to South Carolina, recruited 40,000 former slaves. And the historian said, but for those 40,000 people of color, the war would not have been won. And so I think there's something to be said for us being in this room today. And you're welcome here today. And I just want to close by saying this. You know, the last time I went to jail, the first time was when I met Emily, and that was a blessing. But the last time I went to jail, I ended up staying 3 days and 3 nights. We were supposed to be there for only a few hours. And the reason I was there 3 days and 3 nights is because the person who was supposed to be out raising the bail ended up in jail. I did Prince Newman. And he couldn't raise the bail while in jail. And I often say I learned a lesson that day, that all of us have roles to play.
There you go.
My role that day was to go to jail. But Ida Quince's role was to raise the baby. And so you all who have been agitating, you have a role that you are playing well. We here are legislating.
There you go.
And we must play our role well. You agitate, we legislate, and together we can be successful. And I close in honor of my good friend Barbara Williams by referring all of you to the good book, the book of Hebrew, the 11th chapter, in the very first verse. Faith, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. I have faith that we're going to get this done.
Let me again say thank you to our majority whip. We were also joined by Congressman Al Green of Texas. Thank you, Al Green. Thank you to all the press. Thank you. I'm not going to call them our guests. Thank you for our sisters in leadership. And let me just say, Jim, you referenced and reached over to Clay, as we call her, Brown, who's been in the fight and the movement with labor. Who's been a strong voice and sometimes too quiet of a soldier. But we all know her. And when you have the decades of leadership, I was honored to share a cell with you. And let me just say, this concludes the press conference. If there is a question or two, we will take those questions now. And if not, we simply say thank you.
Question from the grill. Have you heard from other caucuses, such as the Hispanic caucus, on this, as far as a partnership to push through voting rights legislation? Have they been in talks with you guys?
It's funny you should mention that. Today we have a meeting which is called Crescendo. and all of the chairs are meeting, and certainly this is on the Congressional Black Caucus's list every day, every meeting, every hour. So we are comfortable that there will be many more as you have joined us today in partnership.
Do they plan to meet you guys on the front lines? You guys have really been the face of this, but as you said, voting rights touches everyone's issue, not just black folks.
I think they're all on the front line.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, the
Tri-caucus.
which Eddie Benice
Johnson.
years ago, Eddie Benice Johnson, functioned daily. They are
That's great.
in concert with us on this.
And let me just tell you, on HR 1, which you know has voting rights legislation in it, the chairs of those caucuses, when we passed that on the House floor, were with us. So I think that's an indication that I'm comfortable in saying yes.
Congressman, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And then Vote to Latino is one of our partners for this, as well as APIA Vote. And
Right.
next Wednesday, we'll be back on the Senate side with women of color and our generation, and our young, we all young. Younger leaders with us, for another day of action next Wednesday.
Thank you. Okay, votes have been called. Thank you so much.